Hello, I'm Rosie. Today I'm going to be talking about my TBR jar challenge for July. I've recently moved house and I accidentally left my box of challenges at my parents' house, so unfortunately there won't be a challenge for August. But given that I've got very few books here to read and I'm on a book buying ban, so today I'm just going to talk about the challenge I had for July, which was to read a book that was over 500 pages long. For this I read Thief's Magic by Trudi Canavan. I was disappointed with this book. I've really enjoyed the previous books of Trudi Canavan's that I've read, so I went into this one feeling very optimistic that I would enjoy it and with a few quite high expectations. The book didn't meet them. I was very disappointed and it was kind of just a bit of a letdown really. So in summary, Thief's Magic is the first book in a new series called Millennium's Rule. It's set in a world where to use magic is to drain the surrounding area around you from magic, and this book has multiple worlds where this kind of magic is used but slightly differently with the same principles behind it. In Thief's Magic there are two main characters and each have their own point of view and sections, so there's a bunch of chapters from Tyen's perspective. Tyen is a student who is learning to become a sorcerer archaeologist, so someone who's learning magic but in a kind of archaeological way, so he's hunting old ruins, looking for treasures and that kind of thing. And on one of his treasure hunting adventures he stumbles across a book that is conscious. Things happen and Tyen finds himself on the run from the academy where he was a student. The other main character, who he also gets sections from, is called Riel. Riel lives in a very different world from Tyen. It's believed that only the priests are allowed to use magic and only men can become priests. Riel's the daughter of one of Fier, which is the city's wealthiest families, and she encounters a corruptor and things go on from there. She also falls in love with someone who's not acceptable by her family. Essentially her story is all these conflicts with her family and her love for this guy, and it's only towards the end that you actually get a bit more about the magic and it gets interesting for her. With the characters, I really did not like Riel's storyline for a whole chunk of the book. I found her quite boring to read. She was only preoccupied by the guy she was in love with and basically pushed away her family so she could be with him. So I felt I could not connect to her in any way at all. Like, there's no way I would push away my family for some guy. She's just a bit of a wimp really. Like, she wasn't as strong a character as I had hoped she would be. Tien, on the other hand, had a much more interesting storyline. There was a lot going on and every time you read it something else happened that kept you interested, whereas Riel's was a bit more, oh, we're back to this again. What next? It's only towards the end of the book that I actually started paying attention to her, otherwise I just kept skipping through and it just was not as good as I had hoped it would be. Outside of the main characters, the secondary characters were quite interesting. You kind of didn't really get to see much of them. Like, I kind of wish we got a bit more background into them because some of them made certain decisions that didn't really fit with what I had pictured them to be like. So I kind of feel like this book was just a setup, building up the characters for the rest of the books, which was kind of a letdown because this book does not at all stand as a standalone, which is generally what I like my first in a book series to read likes, because otherwise I find myself just like, I don't want to be forced into reading a second book. I want to read a first book and then if I want to go to the second book I can continue on, but if I don't, I've got a completed story already. Whereas this one was just like, oh, so you built it up and now I've got to wait a year or however long it takes for the next book to be written to actually find out what's going on. So the story, like in that regard, was the biggest disappointment for me. More so because this is a kind of a spoilery bit here, but Riel and Tien never meet. The stories are completely separate. It felt like I was reading two completely different books. at the same time with similar magic systems, and it just felt wrong. That's what really let the book down for me. On a more positive note, the world building in this was really interesting. Each of the worlds had their own mythology that got built up, and as the story progressed you saw more and more, which gave a bit more understanding about why the characters were acting as they were. I think one of Trudi Canavan's strengths is actually her world building skills, which I really like. The writing was also really good, like Trudi Canavan can write. I think it was just, in this book, she had an idea for a story, but it didn't quite come across as well as it could have done. I have a feeling the next book will be a lot better, especially if Riel and Tien finally meet. But right now I don't actually know if I want to read the second book, because this one just disappointed me so much. I gave this book 3 out of 5 stars. The story, the characters, they really let it down. The world building and the writing kind of brought it up a bit. So yeah, a bit of a disappointment. I was looking forward to this book, especially since the cover was so pretty. That's it for this video, because I don't have any challenges to pick out for next month. I think essentially my challenge will just be to read the books that I put in my TBR. I will see you next time. Goodbye!